everybody. I wanted to apologize real quick because I know these videos are coming out slow and slightly out of date. I am currently sort of on the road. I am out of state visiting my mother in Wyoming, and we're trying to get a lot of work done on her property, things that have fallen behind or things that require a lot of physical labor that she's kind of beyond a point where she needs to be doing it. And so I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to come out here and help her with those things. Many of those things include some yard and garden work, and so I am filming some of that, and there will be videos on how we're handling some of those things coming. So I'm out here in a really little town called Grable, Wyoming. This is where I went to school. This is where I finished school. I've moved like 17 times in my life, so it makes life interesting whenever anybody asks, "Where are you from?" And I'm like, I don't think we have the time to answer that question. I don't even know how to answer that question, and so half the time I just say, oh, I'm not. I'm from a little bit of everywhere, and honestly, I'm good with that. I like it that way. It's given me a really interesting perspective on life, and it's made me appreciate a lot of things that I think people who live in one place all their life take for granted. So anyway, I wanted to take a quick break to come out here and show you guys the first place that I ever grew snap peas, and this is a very good example of how you can get started with nothing but seeds. Yes, is it preferable to have a big beautiful trellis, which I still don't have, but I'm working on. I'm getting close. I have a small planter with a lattice backing on it at my townhome in Columbia, Tennessee, which is zone 7A. I should look up and see what zone this is. I can't remember. My mom could probably tell me. I'll put it up here on the screen if I can track that down for you. But when you don't have a cattle panel or a hog panel or a beautiful piece of lattice or a chain link fence, sometimes all you have is what's already on your property, and you don't have the resources to go out and get other things, and that should never deter you from learning to grow some of the basics in your garden. You don't have to have those things. They help. It's wonderful to have those tools, but they aren't strictly necessary. I just grew on this thing for like the first 2 seasons that I ever grew snap peas. It was not quite this spread out, this big old stump. It's a big old bottom of a tree that just got basically ditched and left here on my mom's property, I think before we bought the property even and lived here. So it's been here deteriorating for about 20 years. These pieces were closer to up here. They were like evenly sticking up at the time. You still could grow snap peas on this even if it's collapsed like this. So what I did was I just plugged them, and actually, no, these are just weeds. Okay, so I just like plugged in pea seeds all the way around the bottom here, and they just grew up and covered over this stump. Is it ideal? No. Did it work? Absolutely. It was totally functional. So I would like to take this moment to, one, encourage you to use what you have, and don't ever let the feeling that you can't buy the best tools for the job stop you from trying, because even if you don't have perfect results because you didn't have the perfect tools, you still get perfectly good vegetables out of it sometimes, and even better, you learn things, and so when you do have the right tools, you are able to use them more effectively and get an even better harvest and happier plants. So the second thing I wanted to take a moment to say was thank you so much for stopping and taking the time to watch my video. I'm a brand new baby channel, just a couple months old, barely, and I really appreciate your time. And it is starting to rain out here, actually. They are getting substantial amounts of rain out here in Wyoming, and it is just wild. I've never seen it this green in north central Wyoming. It's high desert up at the feet of the Bighorn Mountains. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I would love to talk to you guys about gardening in any climate. I've done a little bit in different places, out in Wyoming, in the Northeast, in Pennsylvania. Now I'm in Tennessee. I think I did a little bit in Florida too. So without further ado, I will take you to the footage that I shot pulling the peas out of my trellis planter, and I'd like to show you the simple process it is to save some of those seeds so that you have something to plant next season. Can we take a second to talk about this super awesome composter? It's one of the ones that's got a handle and everything. It's a pretty good size. And we're probably going to be posting it for sale. If you are in the Graybull, Wyoming area, we have a composter for you that you desperately need. We are working on thinning out some of the extra stuff so that eventually when my mom is ready to move off of this property, she doesn't have a lot of extra stuff making that harder. And she's kind of at a point where she's not able to utilize this composter. It was given to her by somebody else that had moved beyond using it in their garden, and I really wish that I could take it home. I would really use it. I would love it. But unfortunately, I flew out here from Tennessee, and something tells me if I brought a big composter with me on the plane, it just wouldn't turn out great. So we're going to have to find another home for it, and I'm going to have to keep putting out there in the universe that I need one to come to me in Tennessee where I can actually utilize it. Isn't that cool though? These little latches just slide up like a suitcase latch basically. And they've got them on both sides so you can completely take this panel off. So I know a lot of people will not understand being excited about a composter, but I thought if there was anywhere that I could confess my composter envy, it would be here, and you guys would understand. So you can see these sweet snap peas are definitely done for the season. There was powdery mildew issues. They're starting to get a little grimy, a little moldy, and really I would have liked to have had these taken care of before this point. But, you know, there's a lot of things in the garden that are very forgiving, and they just kind of hang out and wait until you can get around to them. And if you are saving peas for seed, you want them to be really mature. For the most part, any seeds you save, this is the case. And so I had left a good handful of these peas on here towards the end because I knew that I wanted to collect them and not have to buy more seeds to plant in the fall. So here you can see there's a lot of mildew kind of stuff. This is a shorter one, so don't write off these little shorter ones, because even though they don't have like 5 or 6 peas in them, this one had, I think, only one, but it was a really good mature seed. So this will probably when I plant it, this will grow pretty reliably well. It's worth the handful of seconds it takes to pull it open and grab that seed out. So here I am just making a point of lifting up all of these vines that grew out so tall that they hung way off of this trellis. Really, for this variety of peas, I needed a taller trellis. But this is what I had available, so this is what we grew on. Underneath you can see, because we are well into the summer now, hot weather has been here for a little while, and these peas had turned. This is how you know when peas are pretty much done, when the bottom vines start to go brown like that and this powdery mildew starts to set in. If you wanted, you could leave these longer. Some people will leave them to completely dry on the vine, but I was a little concerned because of the amount of rain and humidity that we had in the late part of the spring If you leave it in those conditions until it's completely dead all the way through the vine and the pods are totally dry, in the process of that, what can happen is that mildew and mold can make its way to the inside of the pea pod, and it can actually rot your seeds. If you don't have so much mildew, you don't have to worry as much about that, and it's fine to just let them dry on the vine. I'm using some nippers. Slightly bigger set of clippers would have been ideal here, but I couldn't find mine. I have been moving tools between garden bags and buckets as I'm traveling back and forth to the in-ground garden at my mother-in-law's house. So these little nippers work just fine. These vines are not super hefty, so I'm just clipping along the edges to perform surgery here and separate them off of the lattice. This lattice worked pretty well, but I think it's not my favorite thing ever to grow peas on. The lattice is a little bit thick, so it's kind of hard. You really have to persuade things and thread things through by hand. It's hard for the peas to grab onto on their own. Whereas something like chain link, I think, would have been easier for them to grab. These are my mums that I bought a couple years ago at Walmart, and they had buds on them really, really early this spring. Usually it's not until a little bit later in the summer, but they have these tight little buds, and I'm really excited when I do get back to Wyoming to see how close they are to flowering. My mums have these tight little buds for quite a long time before the flowers actually bloom. Usually they tend to bloom towards the late summer and into the fall. That's why you see them out at lawn and garden centers and Walmarts and grocery stores as a fall decor plant. And that's my bee balm. And my pepper planter is coming along great. They look so much better than they did when I first put them in there. They were kind of stressed out, and now they're a beautiful deep green color. These are lunchbox peppers, and these are shishito peppers, I believe. They had some flowers on them when I left, and then it's jalapenos and orange sun bell peppers at the end, with a few nasturtiums and a marigold plugged in. And these are my extras that, had I had the time before I had to leave on my trip, I would have taken out and just plugged in the ground somewhere out at the in-ground garden, because my container garden is officially full and I am out of parking spots for all of these plants. The trick is to start more than you need so that you always have enough. Wintertime was kind of rough on these bushes in my front yard. I'm not 100% sure what kind they are, but you can see the two that are further out did much better coming back, and these two on the end, for the longest time they didn't have any leaves on them, and I thought they were completely dead, and I'm still not convinced that one in the middle is going to make it. These, again, I can't think of what this is. This is just a landscape plant that was put in by the builder that put the neighborhood together, but it bursts in big pink beautiful flowers late in the summer that the bumblebees really love. This is my front patio area as I am leaving it for my trip, and I'm going to be gone all of June. And I think my current plan is to be back July 4th. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be able to take that kind of time to come out and see people and help with some things out here. So shelling peas, whether you're shelling them to save seeds like I am here, or whether you are saving them for winter to put in a soup pot or chili, is pretty much the same process. And this is how I like to do it. Just kind of, if it's a small amount like this, you can just dump them on the plate, or you just have 3 containers, one for the peas as they are when you're starting, and one for the peas that you're taking out, and then one for the compost trash that's just like the empty pod shells. And it's actually a super fun activity. I really enjoy it. It's a tedious, and a lot of people don't enjoy tedious activities like this, but I think having something like this, it's almost like knitting or drawing for me. It's very relaxing and a lot of fun to sit down with a good movie or a TV show. I think my husband and I were binge watching the show Evil, which super creep factor, but excellent story. And normally I don't like things quite as creepy as this show, but it's very, very well done. So it's worth suffering through the stuff that's a little much for me. I think it's on Paramount Plus, but we were just kind of hanging out together and watching a TV show as I just worked my way through this little cup of peas. And this gave me plenty of seeds to plant a whole trellis of planters this fall. So I'm really excited for that. If you heard some of my shorts that I put out, especially earlier this spring, I was sort of bemoaning the fact that I only had that one little 2.5-3 foot piece of lattice to grow peas on. And that's really only enough room for maybe 10 vines, and that's planting them pretty close together. And it worked, but it's not ideal. And so because of the way things are working out at the family garden, in the in-ground garden, this fall I should be able to plant many more peas. And it's a really good example of, put it out there in the universe, pray for it or ask for it from the universe, whatever your spiritual beliefs are. I really think if you put it out there and you work your way towards that goal as if it's most definitely going to be coming, as if it is already on its way to you, there's something that attracts to you what you need when you're ready for it. If you have a whole bunch of snap peas like these, you can save them if you have more than you can eat fresh. I so far have never been fortunate enough to be able to grow that much at once. But you can blanch them and put them in the freezer. I believe you can also freeze dry them. I don't know how well they would do dehydrated. See, here's where I was showing you the mildew that was on the outside. Eventually, if it's left go like that, in that condition, it will come through that pea pod. You can see it was already getting dark on the inside, but none of the peas were moldy. So you can freeze dry or put in the freezer, blanch and put them in the freezer to save them, but I'm not sure how they would do dehydrated. If anybody knows, let me know. The instructions I found online did say to blanch them for 1.5 minutes. Personally, I think they're pretty delicate, and that's kind of a long time, because the idea is if you're blanching something to freeze it, you don't want to cook it completely. And so I would do half the time if you were going to blanch these. But you can see they're just like a regular pea that you would buy from the grocery store in a frozen bag or in a can. And you just take those regular old peas and plant them. You can buy a bag of dried peas at the grocery store from the aisle with the beans and rice and such, and plant them, and they usually will grow. The only thing is you don't know 100% what variety it is you're growing. You don't know how big those vines are going to get, how much trellis they need. And you don't know if they're going to be real good for fresh eating or if they are purely going to be a shelling pea.
So I just write a little note to myself so that should I not get around to planting them, I will know how old they are, and they will go in my seed storage box. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have the best of luck saving seeds in your own garden. There's many things like peas that it takes very little effort, and it has a very great return. So I definitely would encourage you to give it a try. Oh, and P.S. Make sure that you let them sit out on a plate or a piece of paper or a towel so that they dry. You can see in this picture here, they've been drying for about a week on my table at this point, because the last thing you want to do is put those fresh peas in a plastic bag and close it up and then have them get moldy on you. Happy growing!